XRP holders, we've been waiting, and Larry Fink has been telling us about the importance of tokenization. Now it's becoming another big thing that we are seeing in crypto, and it's going to bring probably trillions to XRP in the long run.
Information earlier, maybe there was something in the background. There's not $941 million, so we are not quite at $1 billion yet. I just wanted to clarify that as you watch this video. This was recorded this morning as we had this information in real time. I just got done live streaming and this was brought up to me, and I really wanted to make sure.
So we got to talk about real world asset. This is one important factor that nobody at Ripple is focusing on, and it affects the price. Ripple now holds 30% of the share for digitalization, which basically means that you can put, for example, your stock on the ledger and you can sell it, maybe for a fraction even of a share. And here's the thing. There are a lot of companies now fighting, including Ondo, which works with BlackRock, if I remember correctly, which are using XRP Ripple LUSD to pay BlackRock, from what I heard the rumors. Anyway, that's beside the point. The most important factor is they're all fighting for the market share, because this market share, they will want to maintain it in the next 5 to 10 years when, 200, 300 trillions of assets will be coming on chain.
That I communicated with you that if I say in this video that we've reached $1 billion, it was before I had this information. I hope that you get value from this video. I did work really hard talking about the benefits of tokenization on the XRP.
100 trillion XRP ledger tokenization RWA. This is something I was calling, guys, for a long time. Is why this is super important. We are in very early stages, just like Google, just starting out.
And so it shows Vert Capital $941 million in tokenized assets. And I was like, okay, all right, Vert Capital. Tokenization of real world assets using blockchains like the XRP ledger and XDC network is rapidly transforming traditional finance by converting assets such as debt, receivables, physical commodities into digital tokens. This process enables greater liquidity, transparency, and global accessibility for asset classes that were previously illiquid or hard for most investors to access. Vert Capital is a major Brazilian financial structuring company and is a prime example of this trend. So in 2025, Vert Capital successfully tokenized 130 million in agribusiness. I think this is like maybe
I guess that's agriculture, but the most important factor is this is like a proof of concept, right? This shows other businesses that there is potential for XRP ledger. You can see 1 billion tokenization on XDC network. Vert Capital announced plans to tokenize up to 1 billion in real world assets. And again, the market for this is 100 trillion. So XRP, being built on XRP basically means the price on this will go up potentially over the next few years. XDC network over the next 30 months. The XDC network has selected its high throughput, low cost, fast to second settlements. So this is a first, I guess like you could call it, multi-million-dollar company that, decided, hey, we're going to work with Ripple long-term because we believe in it. And the more companies you have working on the chain like this, the more you're going to have that future proof, basically. When the bear markets hit, XRP is still going to be around. And it's still going to grow in price, and it's still going to grow in value. So it really makes you think.
Integrating the blockchain into Brazil's financial infrastructure. There's also some stuff happening on XDC. If you want to read that, I'll leave it up on the screen here for just that second. You can take a look at it and pause it. The broader significance and market trends here is Brazil as a tokenization hub. Brazil is emerging as a leader in Latin American tokenization space with large projects on both the XRP ledger and the XDC network. Other platforms like Mercado Bitcoin are leveraging the XRP ledger to tokenize hundreds of millions in assets, and global financial heavyweights such as...
Yeah, so you probably heard of Mercado Bitcoin, but this is just many of the small companies that are coming to XRP to actually take the next step, right? We are seeing already that RWAs are very early. Most people don't understand what they are and what they do. The important factor here is these companies, they can only pick one chain where they want to build their projects, okay? And they choose, most of them, like, at least 30 to 50 to 60% of them chose XRP, and they're gonna try to get this number up.
Guggenheim and Circle are joining the ecosystem.
That's crazy, yeah.
Why tokenize real world assets?
There's probably a lot of stuff we don't know about XRP, because it hasn't been revealed to us yet.
Improves asset liquidity and fractional ownership, makes financial products more transparent and easier to audit, streamlines trading, settlement, and management via blockchain rails, reduces counterparty risk, and enables cross-border investor access previously unable with legacy systems. So if you live in another country and you want to buy some type of asset here in the United States, before you would have to find a broker and a third party and go through all of these hoops and pay these additional fees. Now, just a click of a button and a wallet, you can make all of this stuff happen yourself. And so I wanted to better understand, we'll go through this in a little bit. Let me just show you this here real quick. So this is all real world asset conversations we have at Axelar are just about which chain. Let me go ahead and play this for you, how it's going to be impacting the XRP ledger going forward.
XRP, how main ledger can talk to the EVM side chain like seamlessly. It almost acts as a single unified environment, to your point, right? And then the side chain now becomes this kind of a playground where you can go and kind of customize, deploy your own things, but we don't want to fragment users' experiences. We don't want to fragment liquidity, to your point, right? And so general message passing essentially is a primitive that would allow you to speak as you're in a single chain, but now you have another powerful backend that you can use and you can extend to the developers, right? So you can either deploy things at the consensus layer, like that are audited, that are robust once they're ready, or put them in a EVM smart contract layer. But the interoperability within them makes UX and DevX seamless, which is has been our goal for the last few years. And I think it's really important that you guys are taking that approach, because I think fragmentation, if nothing else, is the biggest killer right now in the.
So they're you probably don't understand what they are saying, but from how I understand it, they're saying basically this is the future we're working on XRP. They're saying fragmentation, which is basically owning maybe like 1% of a share on the blockchain, is the next big thing. And that is what makes XRP so big. XRP realizes that people will start buying stocks over, the XRP ledger, which is where all these transfer goes through for very cheap, where banks, can use it. And that's where they really win. They made this plan years before it will even happen.
For both developer and users in the whole space. And like as we think about RWAs and getting them to the next phase, if we don't offer,
people need to feel like they're existing in one environment.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
And not being torn apart by different chains.
Like the block, huh? Isn't the block that put out a hit piece on the XRP ledger? Anyways, let's move past this. We're coming for that 100 trillion XRP ledger tokenization.
So I feel like there's going to be enough for, all these chains. It's going to be very competitive. And XRP is going to be the first one to take the majority of the market share.
TCC's central securities depository surpasses 100 trillion in assets under custody. Remember, they process anywhere from $2 to $3 quadrillion per year. And then you start to look at real world asset tokenization ecosystem map, Ripple, Medico, of course, here it is under custodians and wallets. And you look at this vast, ecosystem of development and deployment. And you do have Ripple at the forefront of a lot of this. And then it says new article on Ripple homepage exploring advantages and considerations of CBDCs and positive impacts of asset tokenization. So how can CBDCs and asset tokenization work together as well? CBDCs are needed to support most significant positive impacts of asset tokenization and increasingly targeted mechanisms for transforming tangible assets, examples real estate or intellectual property, into digital tokens stored on blockchain. With tokenization, anyone can view the process of asset transfer through ownership. Efficient settlement of asset exchange is not as impactful if the cash component of the transaction isn't equally efficient and able to be coupled into a single atomic update. Wholesale CBD.
So they're basically saying, from what I understand here, in addition, tokenization improves privacy and agility as assets move peer-to-peer without the need for centralized intermediaries. So they're saying everything is going to be faster and quicker in very simple words. They're also saying efficient settlement of asset exchange is not as impactful if the cash component of the transaction isn't equally efficient. I didn't get this part. They're sometimes making it very confusing to read, in my opinion, especially since a lot of XRP users are not fully into the specific terms, but they're designed to settle large scale, high value security transactions and interbank transfers. So CBDCs are cool. Well, that's what they're saying, like here, that, you know, they're going to transfer a lot. Central banks, in the case of CBDCs, we aren't exactly sure if they're going to pre-approve yet, right? Because of the Trump regulation. Wasn't there a central bank digital currency ban bill or what it was? I'm not even sure if it went through.
Bank transfers, affording operational efficiencies around speedier settlement times and greater liquidity when settling other assets like tokenized real estate. In addition, tokenization improves privacy and agility, and assets move peer-to-peer without the need for centralized intermediaries within decentralized networks.
So basically, the network is never going to be down as long as there's two users, I understand. It's like, you know, kind of like a dystopia where there's going to be like post-apocalypse and XRP would still be live, like the Ripple chain would still be live, would be pretty amazing.
Central bank,
as long as there's network.
In the use case of CBDCs, this enables a new balance between data sharing and privacy needs, providing increased transparency. Certainly, this isn't possible with traditional technologies, right? So they're talking about here wholesale CBDCs, not retail. Wholesale is central bank to bank or central bank to central bank. That is really what I believe will go first here, because central banks always want to be able to speed up their own operations before this is offered to retail or business.
This is what I've been calling you guys. This is where most of the money is, right? With working with the banks. This is why Ripple's partnership literally gives them tons of money to focus on future projects as well.
Businesses. And so if you can properly get all of these central banks on the same type of networks or have those networks interoperable, value, tokenization value, real estate or whatever it is, intellectual property can move seamlessly cross-border without any delays, and of course happen instantaneously for little to no cost. It's a big deal. And then, of course, we talked about Latin America's largest tokenization project just launched on the XRP ledger, 200 million. Meanwhile, Ripple and BCG project real world asset tokenization is to hit 19 trillion by 2033. I've seen these numbers vary and change through time. The reason these kind of, are not huge numbers, right? Because we look at how much money is out in the world. You're talking about, quadrillions of dollars in value stock.
That's what I've been calling is it's going to be harder and harder for XRP to be under $1 because there's always going to be more money, but the XRP is not going to get any, less. There's about $3,000 or $30,000 of XRP burned every single day. So about 3,000 XRP, that is $10,000 per day already. And it's not even live yet. So that is a ton of XRP that will never be available to the market again.
Stocks, bonds, derivatives, real estate, debt. These are all markets that are going to come on chain. The reason why you don't have 200 trillion by 2030 or 2035 is because jurisdictions, different countries are still trying to figure out when something is sold on a blockchain, how do you update not just the blockchain rails, but how do you update the legacy systems? Because you're going to have a digital twin on the blockchain that you can trade instantaneously, but you still need to have some type of real world certificate, that moves in the real world, right? In our reality here. So once these countries kind of line up and get everything that can move seamlessly across borders, that could speed up this transition, but it's still very fragmented and not everybody has even made the change yet. You even look at the United States, we do have stablecoin regulation through the Genius Act, but we still don't even have crypto regulation. So you can see that
I feel like that's going to be very certain in 2 to 3 years. The regulation right now is still slow. Maybe it's only going to take a year, but once we get that live, this is where the retail can really kick in, where the price can really join in us.
Biggest, financial markets in the world, we're still struggling to figure all this out. I'd imagine that a lot of other countries are struggling to figure it out too, but there are other countries like the European Union and the UK and Japan that have a lot of this figured out already. Hopefully we can follow their example And
the technology is moving really fast anyway, so they have to do something fast. That's why U.S. is pushing so much for these regulations.
Get to the same place that everybody's at. And you also have Ripple to power Dubai real estate. Getting into this partnership and what it means. Dubai's partnership between Ripple and Control Alt is a landmark moment for real estate and asset tokenization, particularly in real estate. Here's a breakdown of scale, significance, and projected money flow on the XRP ledger. Scope and impact of the partnership: first of its kind government initiative. So you actually have Ripple working with the government of Dubai to get this done. This is pretty cool. This is the first time government real estate registration authority in the Middle East, Dubai Land Department, has tokenized property title deeds on a public blockchain, choosing the XRP ledger. Now, listen, they could have chose any technology, but why did they choose the XRP ledger? Because Ripple has been working in the Middle East for quite some time, and they are trusted.
And they've been building this partnership for like 3 years, right? Like even more than 3 years to be able to buy real estate on the blockchain. I mean, it sounds crazy when you think about it, but we're not that far off from the future. The technology is evolving very fast.
Right? They are reliable. They
and they've
understand
been
the
building
technology and how it works. This is why they chose Ripple. Regulatory backing: Control Alt Ripple partner was the first platform in Dubai to get vast virtual asset service provider license approval.
This is a pretty known partner anyway. And again, this is just the start of countries partnering with Ripple. USA has already announced that they are going to be working with the utility projects in the US in some way. And I feel like this is what a lot of companies do get partner. Again, it's a big accomplishment, but tokenizing real estate, city properties transactions, this is something that they will do with a lot of other projects, if I'm not mistaken. Could be totally wrong here again. But Dubai's property market size, this translates to, trillions. I hope the retail comes in and actually buys this, because a lot of people don't even have understanding of what real world asset tokenization is. They don't have understanding of what Ripple actually does. And that's why I'm making videos like this.
From the Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority, embedding compliant custody into asset life cycles. Ripple as custody backbone. Ripple's technology handles custody infrastructure for all tokenized property titles, ensuring secure storage management and enabling fractionalized ownership, which opens the Dubai market globally. And you got to understand, Ripple is showing you that they can work with governments to do this, right? These are kind of like, a testing, a sandbox for the rest of the world to look at and say, oh, wow, they already did that in Dubai. It's working. Here are all the added benefits. This is how much money is savings. This is how quickly they've been able to move up deals.
This is like, building the first partnership is always the hardest. For Ripple, this is going to be like a social proof for other countries to start working with Ripple. I feel like this is very clear.
And sell proper, like there's so many pieces of data that you could look at to say how this is really helping. It says Dubai's authorities estimate that tokenized real estate could account for 7% of the city's property transactions by 2033. So even 8 years from now, they're only projecting 7%. This is how slow this is going to be. Projected value with Dubai's property market size. This translates to approximately 16 billion worth of transactions on the XRP ledger. This is that 7% is 16 billion. Obviously, if they're able to scale this,
16 billion is going to be hard to get in if we are having, 2 billion transactions right now. So it's going to be way, way harder than people think to get 16 billion with this deal. But even if it's 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, in my opinion, this is still a very great deal that is about to happen.
50%, 75%, that would have a much greater impact. Investor accessibility. The project allows fractional ownership with a minimum investment starting at about $545. That's pretty cool. See, like before, you either had the money or you didn't have the money to buy a property. Now, through the tokenization and fractional ownership, you can go into that property with 20 other people or 50 other people, and you don't need all of the money up front. This will really allow people that don't quite have the money to do this themselves to start getting, a piece and getting a foot in the door to build out their retirement, their nest egg.
Guys, this is a very early stage. So in the future, you will be able also to potentially buy maybe a third of the property or a fourth and share it with other people, turning it like a mini Airbnb. Who knows? It's in a very early stage. And, working in this industry, it just tells me how early we are with this. It might take a few years to actually show up, but Ripple is basically planning for people with real estate getting so expensive, for people to start investing in real estate by just buying 1% of it or 10%. Not like, a lot of people cannot afford a full real estate anymore. So instead, we will have people buy percentages of it.
So it's really, really cool. All right, you look at Robinhood. Robinhood document on tokenization cites the success of Ripple tokenization of real-world assets on the XRP ledger. Hundreds of millions tokenized, hundreds of billions is next. And so, of course, I threw the document in here just to try to get some more information. Robinhood document cited Ripple's success in tokenizing hundreds of millions of dollars of real-world assets on the XRP ledger, positioning Ripple as a major player in blockchain-powered asset tokenization. The document highlighted XRP's infrastructure as optimized for financial-grade tokenization. So Robinhood is calling Ripple's infrastructure optimized for financial-grade tokenization and validated XRP as an institutional asset in real-world assets. Robinhood has proposed a federal framework for tokenized real-world assets and has reportedly connected its initiatives to the XRP ledger alongside giants like BlackRock and Goldman Sachs.
Robinhood has went pretty big on everything, like you can imagine. They went pretty rough, basically, which is pretty amazing. So while Robinhood CEO signaled a platform-wide blockchain-driven strategy focused on tokenization, didn't Robinhood just buy one of the biggest crypto exchanges, Bitstamp, if I remember correctly? So they have been calling for the future, basically what Ripple is doing right now. And Ripple was working on this project many years ago, what Robinhood bought. So yeah, Robinhood from almost going bankrupt to basically becoming one of the crypto powerhouses definitely shows something.
This institutional validation is significant, showing mainstream finance increasing recognition. I do want to say that Robinhood has gone on to build their own kind of layer 2 on Ethereum, so we don't really know how much of the XRP ledger that they're going to use. Robinhood did buy Bitstamp, which basically runs Bitstamp and pushed the XRP ledger, integrating derivatives, including micro futures and XRP trading nearly 24/7, represent its commitment to leveraging the XRP ledger. So Robinhood does have skin in the game here on the XRP ledger through this Bitstamp acquisition. But we just got to see how serious Robinhood wants to take the XRP ledger. Also, Robinhood CEO signaled a platform-wide blockchain-driven strategy focused on tokenization Q1 2025.
Robinhood is doing this already, but Ripple is the first one to be doing it. So they might have the main partnership and the advancement. They're pushing for XRPL integrated derivatives, which XRPL has low transfer fees. It has, fast operability. So, of course, they're choosing XRP. Represent its commitment to leveraging XRPL for tokenizing value, especially in derivatives and possibly broader RWA initiatives tied to its trading platform. This is probably the first step that, Robinhood is taking to tokenizing everything. Who knows? They're going to probably tokenize stocks next. Derivatives are the, easiest to basically tokenize. Maybe it could be real estate later. Maybe it could be XRP.
To understand here is Robinhood is making this play because their crypto portfolio is up 200 to 300% year over year. They understand that this is the future and the way value is going to move and transact.
Exactly.
And they want to buy and solidify their place in this new world order.
And they have tons of money to do it. They have probably millions and millions of money or billions to not fail. They are not giving up. And again, these are not small features, guys. If people would, just test this stuff and banks would be testing this stuff, why would they be throwing so much money into development, employees? They're not taking this as a joke. They're not taking XRP as a joke because they have spent, lots of money to actually get ahead.
I mean, how many times have you seen this clip, Larry Fink? Before I play this clip that everybody's seen, I
saw it 10 times.
I'm trying to hammer it home here, baby. I'm trying to hammer this home. That we are talking about the tokenization of the stock market, the bond market, all of this value is coming on chain. But I really wanted to get into here is what happens if $10 trillion in tokenized value is brought onto the XRP ledger. It doesn't quite equal a huge price rise and a price run. Let me just go through this with you so you better understand this. How tokenization works on the XRP ledger. Tokenized assets on the XRP ledger are represented as custom tokens that could be real estate, bonds, stocks, etc., which use the XRP ledgers as infrastructure, but they are not XRP itself. XRP is the native.
So guys, I just want to make this very clear. This is just a side project for XRP. I feel like, XRP is trying to go worldwide. The first thing they are doing is basically banks. The banks are going to be probably the majority of their revenue and transactions. But tokenization is what future-proofs them, after the bank partnerships. That's how I feel like they're doing it. They're, making the partnerships first with banks, focusing on that. And for the future and working on it now, they're doing all of this other stuff.
Currency on the XRP ledger primarily used for payment transactions, provided liquidity for payments and settlement transfers as a bridge asset for interoperability between different currencies and tokens on the ledger. Will 10 trillion in tokenized value increase the price of XRP? Merely adding tokenized value of 10 trillion, like real estate or stocks, doesn't require buying or holding large amounts of XRP. Tokens representing these assets are independent, of XRP itself. Utility and activity. If these 10 trillion in assets are actively traded and settled or transferred using XRP as a bridge currency or for liquidity, institutional retail users may need to hold and use XRPs for fees, settlement, or bridging. This creates real demand for XRP. Institutional adoption. As institutions tokenize and trade more assets on the XRP ledger, they need KYC and AML compliant settlement for fast bridging can drive new utility for XRP. Technological upgrades like hybrid tokens and decentralized identity for regulatory compliance helps attract these institutions and increase tokenized activity settled with XRP. Supply and demand effects. If institutions or users need substantial amounts of XRP to facilitate settlement, collateral, or liquidity for swaps, this can reduce the available circulating supply, which may drive up the price. So it's not just, tokenizing all these assets and bringing them on chain. It's kind of how it's done. And is there going to be, a way that you're going to need to have XRP for collateral backing up some of the assets, and how that's going to unfold as more information becomes available.
I feel like, first of all, getting tokenization is not going to be an easy part. This is over 1 trillion of assets, but if anyone can do it, it's XRP Ledger. Second of all, the biggest problem is not getting the stuff on it. It's actually getting users. So this is going to be the second stage. We are in basically building stage now, and the second stage is getting all these burn transfers for XRP going. Right? This is what we have been waiting for, the burn transfers going on.
On all this, I will bring you the complete updates. Now, let's go to the Larry Fink clip that we've all seen, but maybe if you're new to crypto, this will be new for you. So let's go.
We believe the next step going forward will be the tokenization of financial assets. And that means every stock, every bond will have its own, basically, CUSIP. It'll be on one general ledger. Every investor, you and I, will have our own number, our own identification. We could rid ourselves of all issues around illicit activities of bonds.
That's what I told you guys. They want to do everything, fast transfers, buying real estates through these stocks. This is like a 20-year plan, maybe like a 15-year plan, but basically buying real estate with a click of a button.
Bonds and stocks and digital by having a tokenization. But the most importantly thing, we could customize strategies through tokenization that fits every individual. We would have instantaneous settlement. Think about all the costs of settling bonds and stock. But if you had a tokenization, everything would be immediate because it's just a line item. And so we believe this is a technological transformation for financial assets. If you want to talk about voting and voting choice and all the things, if we know every moment who is the owner of that stock and it's now time to vote, every individual who has ownership is identified and they can vote their own.
Listen, we obviously understand that tokenization of financial assets is where the next evolution of all of this is coming, right? Quadrillions of dollars from the real world moving onto blockchain over the next 10 to 20 years. How quick that'll happen, it'll be up to the jurisdictions and governments around the world, but it is in fact coming. Owning XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, and Chainlink, and some of these other assets, you have a really good shot at owning a piece of the next financial system. Now, we don't know how much money is going to wind up on all of these different chains, but we can see that some of these networks and countries are growing day in and day out. Just to take a look here at the top 10, you have Ethereum here real world league table. Ethereum at the top with basically $7.5 billion. And you have other networks obviously trying to maintain. Now, I don't know why the XRP ledger isn't showing up here at $1 billion, but if in fact that number does hit, XRP ledger will boost itself into the third position.
So yeah, Ethereum is also one competitor we have right now for the RWA, but it is a smaller one. Isn't like XRP ledger at what, 300 million? So Ethereum, yes, of course, Ethereum is twice bigger than us. XRP can definitely catch up, in my opinion, from that. And it's such early stages. I feel like we're gonna have a lot of competition with XRP, but I have to talk about another thing. Smash that like button, guys, if you haven't already. XRP holders could get rich when this happens.